So the next session we're looking at is involving patients and their families, and we're going to have another international perspective. So I'm really, really excited about this session because what you will hear first is Sarah Myers, who's coming in from Wisconsin in the USA to talk about ImproveCareNow network, which won a Drucker Prize for co-production in 2016, which is fantastic news. And I want her to talk to you about all the involvement with clinicians, researchers, patients and parents and carers, all involved with improving services for children and young people. We'll also be moving across to Michael Serres, who's a patient innovator and a Stanford EPatient, and he's going to talk about his own experience of being a patient to innovate and improve. He'll also talk about Stanford University Everyone Included principles, which we're really, really honoured to say that we're going to be Tier 4 awarded after this event. So that's fantastic news. So I'll pass over to Sarah now. Just passing you the ball, Sarah.
Hi, Carol. Can you hear me okay?
Hi, Sarah. Have you got the baton yet that I've passed over to you?
I do. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. So let's find out a bit more about ImproveCareNow.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. As Carol said, I'm Sarah Myers, and I'm the Improvement Director and perhaps the lead sort of co-production cheerleader for the ImproveCareNow network, which I'm here to talk about today. As Carol said, I'm based in Wisconsin, so I'm an employee of Cincinnati Children's, which provides the quality improvement support for the ImproveCareNow network. I'm a bit disappointed to have to tell you that my partner in crime, Justin Vandergrift, who's one of the parent leaders and leaders in general in our network, could not join me today because his daughter is in the hospital and he's dealing with some very important things there, but he sends his best wishes. And, you know, as we all have to be when we're working together in these types of communities, we have to be flexible and we expect these things when people are dealing with health conditions. So we wish our best to Justin, and I will try very hard to do justice to the content he was going to share. So again, I'm really honored and delighted to have been included in this call. I have followed the adventures of Carol and Allison and their sort of merry band of improvers from afar over the past couple of years, and was so lucky to strike up sort of a long-distance Twitter friendship with them and become really part of a fan club of this amazing movement that you all are sort of pushing along and that is very evident today with the number of folks listening into this. I'm really thrilled to have a chance to talk about our learning health community, of which I've been a leader for about a decade, and I'm most proud that we've captured the attention of those who think that we've been able to really make some magic happen in terms of patients and parents, since we're working on a pediatric condition, partnership and leadership. But the biggest thing that I want to, I did not put that on the screen. Some red just showed up on the screen. Maybe somebody's testing that. Coming from somewhere. In any case, I wish I had some of the wonderful pen worked into my presentation, but I don't. In any case, I'm here to talk about the fact that it is definitely not magic. It has taken hard work and a commitment to thinking differently about the roles that people play and the ways in which we can all work together. And I hope I can inspire some of you just as I've been inspired over the past hour or so while I've been able to listen in. So I do want to take a second, and again, I'm not quite as technically savvy as those who used the pen example a few minutes ago, but I wanted to ask a quick question that hopefully many of you answering in can participate in the chat box with. So I'm going to show two questions. The first question I have on the screen, and I'd like those of you who are clinicians, who are professionals working in the healthcare arena, to remove yourself from that role while you're answering this question and really think about your own care or that of somebody in your family. So if you could just type in the chat box yes or no to this question, as many of you who can, have you been asked to provide a clinician or clinicians with ideas for improving the care that they provide to all patients? So just yes or no. And while you're doing that, I'm going to try to turn my webcam on. I thought it was on, so I apologize for that.
No, that's fine, thanks.
not letting me click on the box. Huh. Well, I'll keep trying. And it will be tough for me to monitor all of the responses in the chat box since there are so many, but hopefully those behind the scenes can kind of take a peek and maybe report back later in the call what the majority seems to be. But I am seeing a fair number of yeses and nos, so it looks like a mix. So for those who said yes, I'm going to ask a second question. If you said no, please do not answer this one. So, if you have been asked to provide a clinician or clinicians with those ideas, have you actually been involved in creating or implementing solutions to an identified issue? Oh, lots of no's there. That one is going to be much easier for me to keep track of. Okay, so you can keep responding for a few minutes while I jump ahead. Okay, thank you for answering that. So ImproveCareNow is a network of 94 care centers. The care centers, as I refer to, are hospitals and gastroenterology practices working together to improve outcomes for pediatric inflammatory bowel disease. Most of our centers are in the U.S., but we're proud to say that we now have 2 in the U.K., Greater Ormond Street Hospital and Cambridge Addenbrooke's. And indeed, we now have a center in Doha, Qatar, so we're very proud to be expanding our reach. We started out in 2007 as a very small quality improvement collaborative with just 8 centers. At our first in-person learning session, which is what we call our twice-a-year in-person gatherings, we were a room of about 30 people, and what you certainly will not be able to tell by looking at this picture is that at that time we were all clinicians and quality improvement consultant types. There are no patients and families in this photo. It was a start, but it absolutely was not the right mix for sure. So if you fast forward, sorry about that, if you fast forward to 2016, this system, or the word that I really prefer to use, community, has had some exciting success. The remission rate of kids in the network registry, which now numbers about 26,000 kids, has increased from under 60% to 81%. Our centers have achieved this in a number of ways. They apply quality improvement to building reliable chronic care systems that focus on things like good pre-visit planning, good self-management support, using robust data from our registry, and most importantly, using very similar terminology to what Jason shared in the previous hour, stealing and sharing their ideas and successes seamlessly with each other on the various platforms that we use to learn from each other in real time in our network, including an online knowledge commons that we call the ICN Exchange. So we're definitely very proud of what we've achieved for kids. But a success that we're most proud of is that we're no longer a community of just clinicians, with patients sort of passively waiting in the wings for us to make things better. Sorry, this is just clicking ahead too whenever I click it. I apologize. Sorry for the technical issue here. There we go. Oh, it doesn't like one click, so I'm going to apologize for that. So we're now a community that includes and expects patients and parents as leaders and teachers, not just as recipients of care. And indeed, as Carol mentioned when she was introducing me, we were recently recognized as the Drucker Prize winner for 2016 due to what they called our efforts to reframe and really sort of reset the way that healthcare professionals are working with parents and patients, moving healthcare from a product delivered to patients to an activity that patients, care providers, and researchers can co-produce together, and effectively combining the creative energies and expertise of so many who were previously unconnected with each other. So we were very pleased that although they recognized sort of our innovative things we've done around pre-visit planning, around quality improvement, what really jumped out at them was the work we've done to co-produce. So now, in contrast with that photo I showed you a minute ago, when we meet in person at our in-person community conferences, I now see 300 people, including clinicians, parents and patients, and researchers. And why does this matter? For most of you who took the time to join this call, you know why it matters. As we alluded to earlier, perhaps we're sort of preaching to the choir in some ways, but it's still worth emphasizing. Again, I'm sorry this is going so quickly when I forward it. So why do each of those voices matter in a system like ImproveCareNow? So like the 1.4 million Americans living with IBD, when not in remission, Catherine, who you see on the screen, Catherine happens to be Justin's daughter who he's taken care of today. She lives with pain and weight loss. The symptoms can be distressing, embarrassing, and even disfiguring. 20% of those with ulcerative colitis end up losing all or part of their colon. Catherine wants to improve that situation. Jamie worries about how to help her child manage his health as he gets older. She also wants to know if he's getting the best evidence-based care, and she wants his care team to be ready to meet his needs at visits. Mostly, though, like many parents, she wants him to have the same opportunities as other kids his age. Jamie wants to improve care for those reasons. The clinical team at the Mayo Clinic provides great care, but they want to do more. They want to be more prepared, they want to improve their clinical flow, and they want to match care to the needs of their patients. They're interested in interactive technology to engage older patients in self-management, but they want data not just for research. They want to use it to shape the care they provide today. And finally, Michael, a researcher, wants to know how IBD is being treated around the country, and the world indeed, to better understand cost, quality of life, and outcomes. So each of these individuals and the many others that they represent have ideas, solutions, and a role to play in improving care. Their needs and knowledge are incredibly powerful on their own, but it's been amazing to see how much more powerful they've been when they're all working together to improve the system. And by working together, we're better able to try things out that will improve care not only within clinic walls, where the clinical team and the researchers are working, but also outside of them, where Catherine and Jamie and others like them are living day to day, getting experience that can help others. So again, they all have a story and they all have knowledge, ideas, and talents that are helping improve care now today. So because, this screen is just not liking my one click here. I apologize again. So I don't have a lot of time to talk because Michael has some things to share and we'll have time for discussion at the end, but I wanted to jump right into a few examples of what has come out of this collaboration when you combine the ideas and make space for parents and patients to contribute. One young patient, his name is Zach, he's cared for at one of the ImproveCareNow centers in North Carolina. He found that inserting his NG tube was scary, as it could be for many kids and many adults indeed. So he figured it out and he made a how-to video for other kids. This video spread to countless kids throughout the community. Our system and his clinicians had not created this type of tool for Zach. So Zach, who was all of 9 years old at the time, went ahead and did it. One of my colleagues just put the direct link to the video in the chat box. In the interest of time, I am not going to show it. Maybe we'll have time to show a snippet at the end. But this, again, has been spread to countless kids, and there was no clinician that said we need this. Zach jumped in and filled a void. Several members of our ImproveCareNow Patient Advisory Council noticed a lack of information for kids their age about living with ostomies. So they set out to create a toolkit for kids like them. Again, no one asked these patients to do this. They saw a void, clinicians had not created this for them, and they filled that void. They've been generous with their time and talent, and in doing so have helped us improve the services that impact members of our community and beyond. There we go. Our parent working group, of which Justin is one of the leaders, saw that we continue to have areas in which we might need improvement, but again, the clinicians who are working inside the clinic walls did not have ideas for doing the things that would actually meet the parent and patient needs. So the parent working group and our patient advisory council each took a step of creating these trading cards, which you can see on the screen. They use these not only to share who they are as people, but also to talk about key events from their IBD journey, so that when clinicians and improvers in the network were looking for partners, looking for people to take the lead on improving particular services, we could find those people who wanted to fill that void, like the other examples I just showed you. These have now been stolen shamelessly from the clinicians in the network who are saying, wow, we need our own trading cards so the patients and parents can find us. And it's been a phenomenal way for people to be able to connect. Also in our parent working group, this is so sorry, guys. This mouse just is not behaving. Also in our parent working group, our team from Levine Children's Hospital, they were handing out paper to patients who were newly diagnosed, sharing information about a number of things. There we go, the arrow works better. One of our parent leaders, Justin Vandergrift, again, who is going to join us today, said, you know, generally when patients are dealing with a new diagnosis, when they're walking out with a stack full of paper, where does that paper go? I'm sure many of you participating from afar will sort of be able to relate to the fact that a lot of times it's overwhelming, and a lot of times those pieces of paper end up in the trash. He walked in one day to his clinic and said, you know what? What if we as a parent working group worked with you to create a set of videos that will help newly diagnosed patients identify some of the areas that can be really important early in the disease process, but again, also those things that end up on paper and in the trash bin. He took the lead. It was not the clinicians, it was not the media department that took the lead. He within about 2 weeks' time, was able to identify the areas that were the highest priority for newly diagnosed patients, worked directly with the care providers to produce these videos, and they're now shown routinely in the clinic waiting room while folks are waiting. Again, identifying a void that the clinicians had not filled and creating a solution. And in a final example from our parent working group, the team at Riley Children's Hospital identified sort of a great new tool for making injections less painful. It's called Buzzy. It creates a vibration when patients are getting an injection and really distracts the kid in some ways that have been very, very useful. The parent working group was very frustrated that this was not available to all patients in the system. And they decided, instead of waiting around for the clinicians to find a way to go through hospital purchasing, to figure out if it was something that the organization both could get behind and buy, the parents put their heads together, wrote a grant, and secured Buzzy for all of the patients in clinics. So they no longer had to wait and see whether an evidence-based paper would come out that said this is something that the hospital should do. And again, because it was driven by parents who really set the stage with the clinicians and the administration for this being important, getting back to the importance of that patient experience that Jason mentioned, it was able to be pushed through much more quickly than if clinicians who don't have a lot of extra time on their hands to go gather the evidence and write the grants had done it. So another great example. So we have a myriad of examples, and one of my team is putting in the chat box a whole lot of links to some blog posts that talk about those examples. But I want to round this out by talking a little bit about what I think are the key ingredients in building the system that has supported collaboration. From my vantage point, after a lot of trial and error and really getting some things wrong the first time, it seems to come down to a few things. First, the organic part, the people. A more intentional part, the structure and process. And also a bit of some softer yet important things like trust. So the people first. We're really fortunate that our early successes attracted and sort of set up conditions for the involvement of some patient and parent collaborators who are not only motivated to improve their own care, but also have skills to co-produce real improvement for many. Our parent working group wanted us to understand just how much expertise resided in the community, so they polled the group before one of our community conferences last year and said, what do you do outside of your kind of day-to-day work caring for your child and navigating the healthcare system? And as many of you can see on the screen, they have all kinds of expertise which are directly relevant to building some of the tools that can make care better on a daily basis. Plus, as many of you can imagine, they have a collective hundreds of years of experience and expertise providing technical hands-on care to their kids. How many clinicians can say they have hundreds of years of experience? So this was really an incredible exercise. And for example, from this exercise, we learned that a parent of a child cared for at one of our centers worked for the largest school system in the U.S. and had been part of building their grant review process. We, at the time, were building a new ImproveCareNow research committee, and she actually took the lead in helping us set up our own grant review process, which would have been a much slower and cumbersome process without her coming in with real expertise from her life and her professional life. So in addition to making space for these kind of people to co-produce using the skills and knowledge they share with us, becoming really intentional about structure and process has been vital. While many of the examples I shared earlier and that you can read about in the blog happened organically, at some point you get bigger, as we have, moving from 8 centers to 94, and you really need to make sure people are aligned, that like-minded people can find each other, and that you can track all the activities so people can navigate them. At first, we had intentionally tried not to fit our patients and parent partners into a mold. Because they were volunteers, we didn't want to put them into a box on our org chart or pressure them to work in a certain way. But a couple of years back, they actually asked us to help create more structure and accountability. They very wisely wanted to be seen as official within the network and have processes guiding their work. So we challenged them to create a structure, and they sure did. This is a sample from our parent working group, but our Patient Advisory Council has a similar org chart, and they're now formalized prominently on the overall ImproveCareNow org chart, as you can see down here, and they feed up into the larger network committees. Indeed, Justin, who is going to join me today, is a co-leader of the ImproveCareNow Strategy Council with a physician. So co-producing these structures really set us up for success. And so finally, in addition to finding the right people and creating some structure for them to succeed, or actually them creating the structure to succeed on their own, some softer things like trust come in. And this is where hopefully we can have some discussion at the end. It can be really hard work, as you all know, and as we've heard throughout the morning, there is not a roadmap for these new relationships, although together I think we're starting to build one. Most of us already did think about patients and parents as partners in sort of an abstract way, but we also thought of them as our customers. Again, alluding to what Jason said earlier, we felt like we had to make things work for them. But now we see it's about working with them so they can help us get things right. And this shift, as many of you on this call know, and especially the clinicians perhaps, can be really disconcerting. We start to wonder what our place is when we have people creating these wonderful things off on their own. So we as clinicians and improvers really need to trust we're still needed. We need to learn to have open conversations about our constraints and be able to say, which I say probably on a weekly basis now to our parent and patient partners, I didn't get this right. This conversation about how we work together didn't go well. Help me do better next time. So our shortcomings are definitely much more visible now that parents and patients are sort of woven right into our structure. But when we're open about those shortcomings, we get better together. So I'm putting up some common fears on the screen. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read these word for word, and maybe we can pull them up later after Michael talks and we have some discussion. But I would love to have some folks type in the chat box very quickly what their fears are about co-production, whether you're sort of a patient, a clinician, an improvement professional, etc. These are some of mine, and I alluded to some of them as I was just speaking. But again, it's things like, we'll make our problems visible. They won't want to be receiving their care here anymore. And personally, for many of us who have been working in this field for a long time, because we're improvers, because we want to be seen as the people who fix things, it can be very tempting to worry that maybe your ideas won't be needed or heard anymore. We've been proven wrong time and time again because we all know we work better together. But these are the kinds of things that have slowed us down a bit as we've figured out how to do this. So to sum up, I do like to use this onion to kind of show the layers in our community. And I think many of the complex communities in which you are working have some similar issues with having a lot of layers. So we have our overall network. We have all kinds of sort of committees and initiatives. We have learning labs, which are small groups of centers with things in common, and we have centers. And I think until you make these layers visible, it's very hard for like-minded people to find each other. And an important point as you think about these layers in your community is that not everybody from a patient and parent perspective is going to want to participate at every level at every time. You have parents, like the one who I mentioned earlier, who really just wanted to get involved at the national level and help us set up our new grant review process. You have patients who really want to get more involved in what's happening at their center level and have very little interest in being part of the national parent or patient advisory council. So having opportunities visible at each of these layers, and more importantly, having the patients and parents tell you what opportunities they'd like to create is very important. Because until you make this visible, it's very hard for those like-minded people to find each other across these layers and make sure that they can find some ways to work together. So I'm going to end, because I'm also very excited to hear from Michael, by showing you what we think are key drivers of co-production. I've seen similar lists throughout the morning of this. I think there are definitely some similarities and differences. But I want you all to kind of think about these, again, when we come back to the conversation at the end. And these are the things that we think have made a difference in our community. I would love to hear what's missing from this list because we certainly always have room to improve. But the bottom line is that sometimes you do need to sit down and say, what has it taken in this system and in the participating care centers to create the conditions for co-production, because it doesn't just happen organically. And finally, as Jason said, just start talking and connecting as people. This was an incredibly powerful exercise that a number of our centers did before our last community conference, or actually a community conference, I think last spring. We said, what would happen if you sat down in clinic and asked patients these questions, just a small group of patients? What are the 3 things you most like about clinic? What do you wish the clinic team knew about you outside of clinic? And how might we better support you in dealing with challenges? And the beauty of this was that not only did the care centers come up with great ideas for making improvement happen, they came up with new partners who they never realized had this set of ideas. So sometimes, even though you have a very busy clinic workflow, you're trying to go from patient to patient, sitting down and making time for these conversations has just reaped huge rewards in both the partnerships and the actual improvements that happen. And I will leave you with this slide from one of my colleagues, Lisa Opapari. We're not, we don't have this completely right yet. We're still learning every day how to make this work at the national level and the local level in a complex improvement network. But the bottom line, and what we try to remember every day, is that it's not about clinicians as caregivers and patients as care receivers. It's really about everyone as care improvers. And we show this at all of our conferences, on all of our conference calls, and we really hope that people take this to heart. And I hope that some of you can kind of start to think about how you might incorporate this philosophy in your work. So I'm delighted to turn it over to Michael, and I know we'll have some time at the end for questions.
Hi. Carol, did my presentation just follow? Okay.
Hi, Michael. Hi, it's Helen.
Hey, Helen. How are you?
Hi. I'm good. For some reason, we haven't got your presentation here. Have you got it? Have you got it on your desktop? It was definitely loaded. Hang on. Here it is. I can see it. I can see it. Yeah. So I just wanted to freak you out a little bit.
That's cool.
Can you see it at the top? So Michael, it's at the top. It says 1600 MS Prez. That's you.
Got it. That's
Yay!
me.
There we go. There we go. Very good.
Brilliant. Have you got that, Michael?
Yeah, all perfect. Thank you.
Brilliant. I'll hand over to you now then, so that you can tell us about all the exciting things that you're going to tell us about, e-patients, etc.
Thank you. Hard act to follow is Sarah, so I will rattle through my slides. And first of all, really though, thank you, Carol, and thank you, Alison, and thank you, Helen, for the opportunity to speak and join you today. It's a real privilege. So it's also a real privilege to be part of the sort of first ever, everyone included, conference outside of Stanford Medicine X. So I'm really thrilled to be part of things, and thank you. As a patient myself, someone that's been involved with the National Health Service in the UK for 30 years, I love this particular caricature slide because it kind of reminds me of the complex world that healthcare is. And although I'm speaking to you from California today and work across both systems, the complexities in some ways don't change. And being part of a healthcare system that is so diverse, so many touch points, can actually be quite intimidating at times and quite a minefield. But I think where we are today, the end of November 2016, is a real crucial point in healthcare. Healthcare is changing massively, and I think we'll go on to talk a little bit about how and why, but fundamentally for me, I think it's really about the fact that healthcare is moving towards an outcomes-based system. And when you have an outcomes-based system where everything is judged by what the outcome is, the dynamic changes. We no longer become a paternalistic system, but to find out what outcomes are important, you have to talk to everybody. Because what's important to me as a patient is very different to my surgeon or my nurse or the IT department or the procurement team. And therefore, when you move to outcomes-based in healthcare, suddenly the dynamic changes massively. And I often use this, that healthcare for me, and it's been talked about before. Carol, you've talked about it. Alison talks about it a great deal. And Sarah alluded to it earlier. Healthcare is just a relationship. You can have all the greatest technology in the world. You can have all the great interactivity that you can possibly want. But fundamentally for me, it's just about a relationship. And on a personal level, my relationship started as a 16-year-old. I'd been diagnosed at 12 with Crohn's disease, but at 16, I went to see a physician that went on to become knighted, and he went on to become the Queen's physician. And I remember my parents taking me into his consulting rooms and basically saying, just be really polite and really quiet. This guy is an incredibly eminent doctor. He knows what he's doing. Don't say anything. And we walked into the room, and the first thing he did was ask my parents to leave. And as you can imagine, as a scared 16-year-old, I was even more scared. But he said something that stayed with me for the rest of my journey. And he said to me, I'm not going to treat you unless we do this together. Your relationship with me is just as important as my relationship with you. We do this as a team. There are things you won't know, and I'm going to help you to understand them. But unless you're going to take as much responsibility for your care as I am, this isn't going to work. And fundamentally, that stayed with me forever, that healthcare, despite with everything, is just about a relationship. As I mentioned, as a 12-year-old, I had Crohn's disease, which is why I was so interested learning more about Sarah's events and what's been going on in ImproveCareNow, because it's obviously very personal to me. And as I said, I was diagnosed as a 12-year-old. I had my first surgery as a 14-year-old, my first bowel resection, and ended up with 25 other further surgeries. And arrived at the point of intestinal failure, where a small bowel that starts at around 5 meters was down to 40 centimeters, and I was kept alive through intravenous feeding. On the 8th of October 2011, I became the 11th intestinal transplant patient in the UK at the Churchill Hospital in Oxford, and I'm subsequently a 2-time cancer patient. And so I've been part and parcel of healthcare for a long time, and seen massive changes, some for the worse, but an awful lot for the better. And in the build-up to my transplant, I started a blog. And believe me, there are people that write far more eloquent than me. You want to hear some great blogs, read the Future Patient blog by David Gilbert and other people. But I started a blog simply so that I could let my friends and family know what it was like going through transplant, what it was going to be like going through something where there was a 50-50 survival rate. And the blog took off mainly because my surgeon and the team started to read it to really understand what it was like from a patient perspective going through transplant. What were my fears? What were my worries? What was the impact on my family? It then got me connecting with other patients around the world. And really, I think this word empathy is used an awful lot, but unless you really can see things with the eyes of another, or you've been through something, or you can understand all the different sides of a discussion, you can't really make progress. And I was in an intestinal transplant conference the other year, and a psychologist spoke after me, and she said, you know what, part of the consent form for any patient undergoing a surgery for a long-term condition should be the opportunity for them to talk to another patient. That ability for that interaction patient to patient is really, really, really vital. And I've seen that empathy and that passion continue through my own healthcare journey, really for the greater good. As I started to get more involved in my own health, I'd always often been known as the guy. Can you hear me now? Hello? Carol? Hello? Carol? Hello?
Why does
Hello?
my thing keep jumping?
Can you hear me?
I want to try and get into it. Look, I put it.
Yes, we can hear you, Michael.
Jump.
Oh, shall I keep going?
Why is it
Yeah, keep going, Val. I think Carol's accidentally unmuted herself. I'll go and mute her for you now.
Okay, no problem. I will continue.
Yes, you please go ahead. Sorry for interrupting you.
That's all right. The wonders of live TV. No, what I was going to say is, as I was going through transplant and asking a lot of questions, and as I continued on, I think I noticed this guy that would always ask the dumb question.
Okay.
Sorry, someone's shouting at me again. Can you hear me? I've stopped again.
No, we can hear you, Michael. Carry on.
Okay. Sorry for the other panelists listening in. So it's really about, I believe, we talk about everybody coming together, we talk about empathy, we talk about respect and trust, but actually it's also about asking silly questions. And I think you never need to be frightened, particularly as a patient, to ask what you regard as a dumb question. That is the most important thing we can do, I think, right now, particularly, as I said to you, as we move towards outcomes-based, that actually we start by asking questions. And we don't have to worry about how stupid they may be, because if they're a question you want answering to, then it's not a stupid question. I had the privilege a little while ago to present with Stanford Medicine X at the White House. This, I guess, is before it becomes the Gold House in a few weeks, but as part of President Obama's precision medicine program, and we were looking at changes in clinical trials and things like that. But this quote reminded me of why this event is so important. A lot of people on the panel today, I haven't met in person on the organizing panel. I've met through Twitter, I've met through social media. Social media for me is perhaps the single biggest thing that has democratized the voice in healthcare. It has allowed voices like myself, voices of others who perhaps feel underrepresented, whether they be carers, whether they be nurses, whether they be physios, doctors, to have a conversation, a safe conversation in one place and come together and look at changing the culture of healthcare. And what social media has done is allowed the role of the patient to really come to the fore. Sarah showed a clip of Zach on the video on YouTube. If I want to go anywhere to learn about doing something with a line that I still have in my arm, or when I was an ostomy patient or whatever, YouTube is the very first place I will go to as my search engine in healthcare, and it's another patient that I will go to. Because patients can't wait for things. Patients have to solve problems every single day. The quote reminds me, in America, a couple of years ago, a few years ago, a movement grew for patients like myself who were living with long-term conditions, who wanted to solve problems now. And it was started in the diabetes community, and it was started partly by a brilliant lady called Dana Lewis, who built her own artificial pancreas. And for those of you who are in diabetes at the moment, you'll see that actually Medtronic, the major device manufacturer, has had the FDA approve their first artificial pancreas. But the We Are Not Waiting movement is really about the maker movement, and it really epitomizes, I think, this event that we're all talking about today, and events like Medicine X and others, that actually you don't have time to wait for problems. I live every day in the knowledge that my survival rate is 50-50. I'm the second person to come out of the center to survive 5 years for my transplant. I don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. None of us know what tomorrow is going to look like, so we can't afford to wait. And there's some great examples. I've talked to Dana Lewis, Emily Kramer, Golenkoff, fibrosis patient, has an amazing not-for-profit, again built out of personal needs. David Gilbert in the UK is the first ever patient director out there. All examples of people that can't wait, people that are building what's regarded in the States as the maker movement, but is actually just people from all walks of life coming together to deliver solutions today and not tomorrow. Now, as Carol kindly mentioned, and I've been involved at Stanford Medicine X for 5 years. In fact, recovering from transplant, my surgeon sent me a link saying you should apply. They were looking for EPatient scholars, and I was lying in hospital in Oxford with tubes and God knows what coming out of me and going, how can I get there? And he goes, if you get accepted, I'll get you there. And I became an EPatient scholar their first year, and now had the privilege of just finishing the first year as the first ever patient in residence. And what was my role? My role was really to take patient centricity to the next level and to really infuse the role of the patient in every aspect of the entrepreneurial side of healthcare. That was solution making. So that didn't have to be a technology. It could be a changing way of clinical trials. It might be some research. It might have been technology. It might have been working with patients who just had an idea and wanted to know how to scale that idea. So I had the privilege of working with the team at Medicine X on that. And everyone included, which has been talked about during this event, is really very much around the principles that all of other speakers have already alluded to. It's simply this: it's about no power hierarchies. It's about respect and mutual respect and empathy. And I'll give you an example of that. 5 years ago at Medicine X, the VIP seats and the front row seats at the conference were reserved purely for patients. No one else, but purely for patients. 5 years on, there are no VIP seats at all. The conference treats everybody equally. So whether you are a clinician, whether you are a nurse, whether you're a venture capitalist, whether you're a techie, whether you're a patient, or whether you're just somebody that has an interest in healthcare, everybody's views and everybody's beliefs are brought together. It's not enough. And we did a role play there a couple of years ago where we had a neurosurgeon and a patient in the room together, and they were given a scenario whereby sadly they had to deliver some news that a patient only had 3 months to live, except the patient was given the role of the doctor and the doctor had to become the patient. The way the patient delivered the news was so very different to the way the doctor had been used to delivering the news that it changed his practice forever. It changed the way he spoke to a patient just by power flipping things around that way. And that's what everyone included looks to do. We call it looking at the lens of healthcare through disruptive co-creation, but really it's just about mutual empathy and respect. Some of you may have heard or read on Twitter the mighty Casey. I love the quote that she talks about here. She's the lady, and if you haven't seen her, Google her, because she has all her DNA details on her QR code tattooed onto her forearm. And she's amazing. But she's really talking about just let me become part of a team. Let me be part and parcel of how you deliver results. Treat me like you treat anyone else. It's very much, Alison talked about it after the last talk from Jason about you know, people aren't just patients, they're real people. Shift can only happen unless you come together and you do things together. But shift, as far as I'm concerned, from a healthcare professional, requires one great thing. It requires bravery. Are you brave enough to have that conversation? I'm going to talk to you for 2 seconds about my own experiences as an entrepreneur and flipping to the other side of healthcare, having been a patient. So I'm lying in hospital after my transplant and I have a stoma. And for those of you who aren't sure about what a stoma is, it's where part of your bowel is brought to the outside of your body and your waste is collected in a bag, a stoma bag, often known as a colostomy bag. But sadly, those bags leak and spill. And in addition to that, your healthcare team want to know how much is coming out and when. And because your nerve endings have been cut as part of surgery, you have no control. I was lucky after transplant. I had 9 months in hospital. I bought some gear off eBay, YouTube videos, and hacked together a sensor really to try and help myself. That sensor became a connected medical device. We took it through FDA clearance, through MHRA approval, CE marking, and was able to do that by asking the questions that I put on a slide a while ago. No questions too dumb. When I came to the US and I needed FDA regulatory approval, everyone said it was going to be a nightmare, and I picked up the phone to the FDA, said I need something called 510K. I have no idea what it is. And they said, it's not a problem, go speak to your lawyers and your consultants. And I'm like, I can't afford lawyers and consultants. I need you to help me. And they went, oh, no one's ever asked that. Okay, I'll help you. And I went to the States, and 9 months later, we got FDA approval. And now one of the FDA's key planks when you're starting to scale up technology is come talk to us. Why don't we do that in the UK? Why aren't we quite as transparent and quite as open? Why aren't we quite as brave or as willing? We have just as brilliant people, just as clever people, just as truly inspiring people, but somehow we don't seem to quite have the bravery. And so there I was, I'd built a device, I was very proud of myself, and then the doctor said to me, but that's great, you've got this device, you're still having to email me or text me output results. That's not how I live my everyday life. We need to do something better with your device to make it better. So we sat down together and we sat with the nurses and doctors and said, how do you want to see the data? Because you're overloaded with data. The world is overloaded with data. How do you want to see the relevant data? And they said, well, I want it in the patient record. I'm like, okay, let's build a real-time solution. And also they said, and also I want to be able to message back my patients when I see trends going to prevent them coming into the hospital again, readmission rates at 20%. So we built a real-time care platform that allows us to deliver personalized results remotely, which was great. But it still wasn't enough, because when we sat with the nurses then at the time, particularly in the outpatients clinic, they went, but there are so many factors that can affect volume output. You know, is someone drinking enough? Are they walking around enough? What are they eating? So currently we're in the process of building another engine that integrates your day-to-day life and looks at how that correlates to output data, all of which is really being co-produced by all the end users. Because my question really is this, is I can build technology, as anybody can, that solves some real problems. But why is it in healthcare that we tend to build solutions without ever starting with the end user? Amazon wasn't built, and Amazon didn't scale without truly understanding what the end user needed and needs. eBay doesn't, Tesla motor cars don't, Ford motor cars don't, but yet in healthcare, somehow we have cool technology or cool solutions or great solutions for things that are going to be done to me without ever being developed by people like me or with me. That's the way the conversation needs to change. Don't ever build a solution without everybody that's part of that solution in the room together. And that everybody isn't just the patient. It is always the patient, but it's often always the nurse, the carer, the doctor. You need an IT person maybe at the hospital. You need to understand how to procurement. Bring everybody together. That's how you deliver real solutions. I'm going to end with a slide that Helen put up. I think it was on Twitter, Helen, but forgive me if it wasn't Twitter, but I definitely saw it coming out of one of your speeches. I'm one of those that had
it's one of mine. Yeah. I got it from Sylvia Duckworth, so, but yeah, I did tweet it.
Okay. Well, we will credit Sylvia, but I'm crediting you, Helen, as well. The question that I think it raises very clearly for me is, if we are going to change healthcare, if we are going to truly transform healthcare, what type of leaders do we need? What type of people need to do it? And this is people, this isn't what type of doctor do we need or what type of patient do we need? What type of personality do we need in order to change healthcare? Are you that leader, and will you come and share and make change with me? You need to, above all, you need to be brave and bold and have real empathy. Thank you very much for listening to me. I believe we have a few minutes left for conversations and chats. So, Carol, I hope I haven't gone over my time. And I think I should be handing back to Carol for questions.
Hi, Michael. It's Helen. Can you hear me? Yeah. So we're running out of time. Yeah. Great. Michael, just to say that was absolutely fantastic, and that combination of you and Sarah was just really wonderful. And I think people that kind of struggle on day by day trying to make change happen, to just listen to what you presented. I mean, the one word that I would use more than any other is hope. And I think also I just did a presentation right at the beginning today where we talked about the difference between lone wolves and mobilisers and organisers, and how too often we treat patient leaders like lone wolves, which means going in and being part of a committee and sitting in the system. And actually, I think we're moving to an era now of mobilisers and organisers, and I think you just epitomised that so brilliantly. So thank you so much, and I think that lots of people will listen to the recording of that. You're getting so many great feedback, just people saying they absolutely love what you just presented. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a real honour to be asked. Real honour to be asked. Thank you so much.
Oh, and also thank you for helping us as well, with everyone included. We feel so privileged to be part of that movement too. So, if we were just going to have like one question or one comment, would anybody like to ask Michael a comment across the seas? Anybody taking part? Any of our 90 participants? Want to ask a question? Okay. What I'll do is I'll just stop there a moment, and we'll just hear back from the chat. So who's been looking after the chat during that conversation? Carol has been, but for some little technical difficulty.
Hi, can you hear me now? No, can you hear me now?
Carol's asking if we can hear her, but we can't hear her. No,
we're in the same room.
I know we're in the same room, but we can't hear her. So I think what we should do is we should probably end that session there on an absolute high. And at this point, we will take a 5-minute break. So could I have presenter rights? Brilliant. So I am now the presenter. So what we can see here is our next session is a UK perspective involving patients and their families. That's going to start in about 5 minutes. We're going to play some music. So please stay with us because we've got some really great sessions to come. And hope to engage you again in 5 minutes.